There's one more thing that I'd like to cover, which is the relationship between particular kinds of exercise and our ability to think and perform cognitive functions. We all hear that exercise is so vital for our brain, that it supports our brain health and our body health. And indeed, that's true, provided it's done correctly. However, many of us are familiar with the experience of going for a run or going for a swim or working out hard in the gym and then not being able to use our brain, to be essentially useless for cognitive functions for the rest of the day. I discussed this with Dr. Galpin this morning, and I learned something very interesting, which is that hard bouts of exercise, of the sort where you're training near failure or you're generating focused muscular contractions for a session that lasts anywhere from, 30, 45 minutes, maybe 60 minutes, or a long run where you're engaging in some interval training during that run. After exercise, there's a reduction in oxygenation of the brain. So there's actually a quite significant dip in the amount of oxygen that your neurons are getting and therefore your ability to think. So it's important that you control the intensity and the duration of your training sessions so that you're still able to do well in life and lean into life the way you need to, because I'm guessing most of you are not in a position to just prioritize your physical training. You also need to use your minds. I'm certainly familiar with wanting to get exercise, but also the requirement of needing to perform cognitive work throughout the day. It also turns out that you can leverage something interesting about exercise and nerve to muscle work in ways that can benefit cognitive function and focus. And it has to do with the way that your body and your nervous system predict bouts of intense focused effort. So let's say you're doing resistance training 2 or 3 times a week, maybe even 4 times a week, and you're doing it consistently at a given time. There are clocks, literally biological clocks within the liver and within the brain that learn to predict that focus and that intense work. If you are trying to get intense cognitive work done, you might try scheduling that cognitive work on the days when you don't do physical training at the same time when you normally would do that intense, focused physical training. Because the systems of the body that generate acetylcholine release and other neuromodulators, the systems of the body and brain that generate focused effort, those are on this sort of clock mechanism in a way that you likely will find that after just a week of training at regular times, you will be able to focus readily on other things when you're not training, provided you do it during the period of time of day when you normally would train. So this is kind of an indirect positive effect. You're harnessing the focus and the expectation of focus in your nervous system for that particular time of day. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about time of day for training. Turns out that whether or not you train in the morning or in the afternoon doesn't really seem to matter for sake of things like hypertrophy and strength, etc. Everyone seems to have a time of day that they prefer to train. I've said before, and there are reasons based on body temperature rhythms and cortisol release, that training 30 minutes, 3 hours, or 11 hours after your normal waking time can be very beneficial and can provide a sort of predictability or regularity to when your body will be ready to train and best apt to train well. There is some evidence that training in the afternoon is better for performance, whereas training for body composition changes and strength changes, etc., doesn't really matter when you train. So you also want to make it compatible with sleep, compatible with work. That really gets down into the weeds of optimization. But I think it's interesting to note that if you're going to train at a regular time, you can take the days when you don't train and use that to enhance your cognitive focus for things that have nothing to do with exercise. So this might be writing or reading or music or math, etc.